There are souls who carry exhaustion, not in their bodies, but in their being. They wake each morning with eyes that have seen too much, hearts that have felt too deeply, and minds that have thought too far ahead. Their tiredness is not the kind that sleep can cure, for it does not live in muscles or bones. It dwells quietly in the corners of their existence, where unspoken emotions and unanswered questions rest like dust that never settles. Some people are not tired because they do too much, but because they feel too much in a world that moves too fast. They sense everything, the tension in a voice, the sadness in a laugh, the distance in a familiar smile. Their empathy becomes both their gift and their burden, an invisible weight pressing against the chest of their compassion. They absorb what others release, often without realizing that every act of understanding takes a little more from them. They are the silent collectors of emotion, the unseen keepers of pain that is not theirs. Such people often mistake their fatigue for weakness, not knowing that the heart grows weary when it spends itself in care. The world rarely understands this kind of exhaustion, the exhaustion of being available, of listening, of pretending to be fine so that others can lean on them. To feel drained for them is to live between two worlds, one of external noise and another of internal silence begging to be heard. There comes a point when even the kindest souls begin to run out of space within themselves. They have spent years being the comfort in others' storms, the warmth in others' winters. Yet when night falls and everything grows still, they feel a hollow ache that words cannot soothe. It is not loneliness, not exactly. It is the awareness that while they have given endlessly, very little has returned to them in the same language of care. Psychologically, this constant state of emotional expenditure reshapes the mind. It begins a subtle restlessness, an inability to feel fully present. The brain, having spent so much energy managing others' emotions, forgets how to regulate its own. Over time, empathy becomes exhaustion. Sensitivity turns into anxiety. The person finds themselves detached, numb, unable to distinguish between peace and emptiness. What once was love now feels like depletion. What once was connection now feels like surrender. They are not cold. They are simply tired of feeling everything so intensely. Human beings are not meant to hold the world on their shoulders, yet some do because they cannot bear to let it fall. They believe love means constant availability, that understanding others is a duty rather than a choice. But the psychology of constant giving is complex. It teaches the subconscious that self-worth is tied to usefulness. If one is not needed, one fears becoming invisible. So they keep giving, even when it costs them the quiet they desperately need. This cycle of emotional depletion grows silently. It is not loud or dramatic. It seeps in gradually, through the cracks of everyday kindness. A few extra moments listening to someone else's sorrow. A few nights spent worrying about things that don't belong to them. A few smiles worn to hide fatigue. Until one day, the body is upright, but the soul is resting on its knees. We often glorify strength as endurance, the ability to keep going, to show up no matter how drained we feel. But true strength, perhaps, lies in stillness. The courage to rest without guilt, to say no without fear, to recognize that even light needs darkness to survive. Yet, those who always feel drained rarely allow themselves that grace. They fear stillness because it feels like abandonment of purpose. They fear rest because it feels like failure. Their exhaustion is psychological before it is physical. It stems from the invisible tug-of-war between the self and the world. The self longs for silence, solitude, and boundaries. The world demands connection, compassion, and response. And somewhere between these two forces, they are stretched so thin that they begin to disappear into transparency. There is a peculiar pain in being emotionally intelligent in a world that rewards indifference. To be aware of every unspoken word, every subtle gesture, every emotional undertone. It is like hearing whispers in a crowded room, impossible to ignore, exhausting to interpret. Such minds are wired for depth, not for speed, yet life today values the latter. They crave meaning while being surrounded by noise, seek connection while drowning in performance. And that contradiction, sustained over time, drains even the strongest hearts. Sometimes, people who feel perpetually drained are not weak. They are profoundly awake. They notice everything. How time changes people, how love becomes routine, how laughter can hide despair. Awareness, though beautiful, can also be a wound that never closes. For to see life clearly is to see its fragility, its impermanence, its quiet heartbreaks that others overlook. Their fatigue, then, is not just emotional, it is existential. Society often tells them to just relax, to let go, as if peace were a switch to be flipped. But their minds are like oceans, constantly moving, reflecting, reacting. The more they try to silence the waves, the louder they seem to crash. They carry within them unprocessed feelings from years ago, fragments of moments that never healed. The mind remembers what the heart tried to forget. There is a moment in everyone's life when energy begins to fade, not because of age, but because of emotional overuse. One can only pour from an empty cup for so long before realizing that nothing replenishes itself without pause. The drained person often fears taking time for themselves, believing that self-care is selfish. Yet, psychologically, this refusal to rest is a form of self-neglect disguised as virtue. The paradox is painful. They give to feel alive, but the giving leaves them hollow. They love deeply, yet each act of love chips away at their vitality. They want connection, but connection demands energy they no longer have. They seek meaning, but meaning requires clarity that fatigue has blurred. And so, they drift between effort and emptiness, yearning for a kind of peace they cannot name. Some describe it as numbness, others as freedom. But what it truly is, perhaps, is surrender. The mind finally admitting it can no longer carry what the heart insists on holding. To understand these people is to understand the quiet war within them. They fight the urge to retreat from the world, even as it drains them. They crave solitude, but fear isolation. They long for gentleness, but rarely offer it to themselves. They are constantly negotiating between caring and collapsing. And every day, they pretend they are fine, because vulnerability feels like weakness in a world that demands resilience. Emotionally drained people are mirrors for humanity's unspoken exhaustion. They reflect how much we are all running from ourselves, disguising fatigue as ambition, silence as strength, and numbness as maturity. The truth is simpler. Everyone is tired, but some have learned to hide it better. The psychology of their fatigue also speaks of unmet emotional reciprocity. When empathy flows in one direction for too long, it becomes erosion. Relationships, whether with others or the self, require balance. When one gives without receiving, the mind enters survival mode, prioritizing others over its own regulation. This imbalance manifests as anxiety, burnout, and disconnection. The nervous system, flooded by constant emotional engagement, begins to mistake safety for stillness and stillness for danger. They start to believe that peace feels wrong, that something must always be happening. So even in quiet moments, their mind races, seeking new worries to hold on to. This psychological conditioning makes rest feel unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable. It is why some people can sleep for hours, yet wake up exhausted. Their body rests, but their mind does not. It is strange how society celebrates emotional generosity, but rarely acknowledges its cost. We praise those who never give up, who always show up without asking what it takes to keep showing up. Behind every strong person is often a history of quiet breakdowns, moments where they stared at the ceiling, wondering why even happiness feels heavy. For the emotionally drained, time itself becomes distorted. Days blur into a constant repetition of doing without feeling, giving without receiving, existing without being seen. The future feels overwhelming, the past too vivid, and the present unbearably thin. They live in psychological fog, where nothing is wrong, but nothing feels right either. The more they push through, the deeper the fatigue burrows. Emotional depletion is not healed by distraction. It requires acknowledgement. Yet acknowledgement demands vulnerability, and vulnerability feels unsafe for those who have built their identity on endurance. So they smile instead. They keep listening. They keep carrying. Until one day, the mind quietly whispers, "Enough." That whisper is not defeat. It is the beginning of awakening. For when the soul grows tired, it begins to seek itself. Exhaustion becomes the body's way of saying, return. Return to silence. Return to boundaries. Return to the self that existed before the world taught you to please everyone but yourself. Still, it takes time to unlearn the habits that create emotional drainage. The need to be needed, the guilt of resting, the fear of disappointing, the subconscious belief that love must be earned. Each of these roots feeds the cycle of fatigue, and breaking it requires a quiet rebellion, a decision to no longer measure worth by sacrifice. But until that realization arrives, the drained ones continue to float through life's noise, half present, half elsewhere. They laugh when expected, speak when required, love when needed. But somewhere deep inside, a part of them watches, detached, wondering when life became something to survive rather than something to feel. They are not lost. They are simply paused. Paused between the person they are and the person they used to be before exhaustion became their second skin. There is something profoundly human about that. The ache of existing in a world that demands constant motion while the heart longs to rest. The irony of caring so much that it empties you. The quiet tragedy of understanding everyone but being misunderstood yourself. And yet, within that weariness lies something sacred. A reminder that depth always carries a price. That feeling everything means carrying both beauty and burden. To be drained is not to be broken. It is to be human in its most sensitive form. It means the heart is still open, even when it trembles. It means the mind still listens, even when it longs for silence. Perhaps the ones who always feel drained are not weak at all. Perhaps they are the closest to the truth of what it means to live fully, to feel deeply, to give sincerely, to hurt honestly. They bear the invisible cost of being awake in a sleeping world, and though their exhaustion may feel endless, it is, in its own way, a testament to the soul's endurance, the proof that even tired hearts continue to care. There comes a point in emotional exhaustion where the mind no longer seeks relief. It simply seeks quiet. The noise of life, once tolerable, begins to feel like a constant hum against the nerves. Even joy, when it arrives, feels filtered, muted, fragile. The drained person learns to smile, not because they are happy, but because they remember what it used to feel like. Their laughter no longer rings, it echoes, a hollow sound of something remembered but not relived. It is in this space that fatigue turns into reflection. The body has grown tired, yes, but the soul has grown contemplative. When one has given everything, the only thing left to do is observe. To watch the world moving, to notice how easily others seem to exist without collapsing beneath the weight of it all. The drained ones begin to wonder, not out of envy, but curiosity, how others keep their balance when their own has been slipping for so long. In truth, it is not that others are stronger. It is simply that some feel less. The mind that feels too deeply is a mind that never rests. It absorbs meaning from every silence, intention from every word, and emotion from every encounter. Such awareness can be beautiful in art, but heavy in living. The emotionally drained are often poets of experience. Even their pain has detail. Even their sadness has texture. But beauty that is constantly observed also becomes a weight. To see everything is to carry everything. Psychologically, the cycle of fatigue deepens when the nervous system adapts to stress as normal. The body becomes used to tension. Rest feels foreign, even dangerous. A calm day may feel suspicious, as if something bad must follow. This is how exhaustion becomes identity, when tiredness no longer feels like a phase, but a way of being. The drained person forgets what vitality felt like. They learn to exist in fragments, performing energy rather than embodying it. And yet, there is still something sacred in their stillness. Within their silence lies understanding, a kind that cannot be taught, only earned through experience. They have seen the cost of emotional openness, and they wear it quietly. They know what it means to hold space for others, without having any left for themselves. They have learned the delicate art of staying, even when they want to leave, because leaving would mean admitting they need care too. Society rewards these people, though it does not understand them. It calls them strong, selfless, mature. But behind every compliment lies a misunderstanding. For what is seen as strength is often survival. The emotionally drained are not strong by choice. They are strong by necessity. They learned early that the world does not slow down for tenderness. They learned that care, if not controlled, consumes. So they built walls disguised as resilience, routines disguised as purpose, and smiles disguised as stability. In psychological terms, this is emotional overextension, when empathy exceeds capacity. The mind begins to protect itself by numbing feeling altogether. It is not that they no longer care, it is that caring hurts too much. So they create emotional distance as a form of preservation. They stop reaching, stop asking, stop expecting. The energy that once flowed outward now retreats inward, seeking somewhere safe to exist. But safety feels foreign to the drained. Peace feels empty. Their nervous system, tuned to constant alertness, mistrusts calm. And so they live in paradox, yearning for rest while fearing it, longing for love while avoiding its weight. They crave connection, yet isolation becomes their comfort. It is a strange kind of loneliness, not the absence of people, but the absence of energy to connect. There is a quiet wisdom in this state, though it rarely feels like it. It is the wisdom of limits, the realization that even light fades, that even oceans need stillness to regain clarity. The drained person begins to sense that life was never meant to be constant output, that perhaps, in resting, they are not failing life but finally participating in it. But such realizations come slowly, because guilt sits at the center of their fatigue. The guilt of saying no, the guilt of stepping back, the guilt of existing without performing. Guilt is a heavy companion for the emotionally tired. It whispers that rest is laziness, that self-preservation is selfishness. And so they keep moving, pushing, giving, until they collapse into silence once more. This internal tug-of-war is the essence of their exhaustion, a psychological contradiction between wanting to live gently and being conditioned to live endlessly. Human beings are not infinite sources of energy, yet many live as though they must be, pouring themselves into relationships, work, dreams, and expectations, hoping the return will justify the cost. For the emotionally drained, that return rarely comes. They exist in a kind of deficit, an emotional economy where everything given disappears without replenishment. And over time, this imbalance seeps into identity. They stop seeing themselves as someone who is, and more as someone who does. To always feel drained is to live disconnected from one's own inner rhythm. The world runs on urgency, while the soul moves in seasons. But modern life does not honor seasons. It demands consistency, productivity, engagement, and so, the sensitive spirit breaks under the pressure of constancy. The drained ones begin to wonder if perhaps something is wrong with them, not realizing that what's wrong is the expectation to always be more than human. In quiet moments, when all noise fades, they often feel an ache that has no language. It is not sadness, nor despair. It is a longing for balance, for a world that breathes at the same pace as their heart. A world that allows depth without demanding exhaustion. But the modern world does not wait, and so they learn to adapt again, smiling when they cannot, showing up when they shouldn't, loving when they're empty. Each act becomes a negotiation with their own depletion. Yet somewhere deep within that tiredness, there remains a spark, faint but real. It is the part of them that remembers softness, the part that still believes in beauty even when it costs too much to feel. That spark is what keeps them from disappearing entirely. It is the reason they still pause to listen to a song, to notice the evening sky, to feel something small and quiet and alive. Because despite everything, the drained ones do not stop feeling. They simply feel differently now, with the cautious touch of someone who has burned their hands on life before. The psychology of recovery for such souls is subtle. Healing does not arrive like sunlight. It arrives like dawn, slowly, hesitantly. It begins with small permissions. The permission to rest without explanation, to feel without performance, to withdraw without apology. It is not a single act, but a quiet shift, from reacting to responding, from enduring to existing. The drained person eventually learns that not every silence needs to be filled. Not every emotion needs to be managed. Not every connection needs to be sustained. They begin to recognize the sacredness of their own limits. What once felt like failure, the inability to give endlessly, now begins to feel like wisdom. They realize that being too tired is not weakness. It is the body's language of truth. Psychologically, this shift marks the beginning of emotional regulation, the moment the self stops living externally and turns inward for balance. The nervous system, once stretched thin, starts to find rhythm again. Sleep becomes deeper, thoughts slower, emotions softer. The drained person starts to rediscover themselves, not as a vessel of others' needs, but as a being with their own pulse, their own boundaries, their own quiet desires. Still, healing is not linear. There are days when the exhaustion returns uninvited, when the mind spirals and the body feels heavy again. But this time, something is different. The fatigue no longer feels endless. It feels familiar. The person no longer fears it. They understand it. They learn to greet their tiredness as one greets an old friend, with recognition, not resistance. For in that recognition lies peace. In time, they begin to redefine what it means to care. To care no longer means constant sacrifice. It means conscious presence. To love no longer means losing oneself. It means standing beside, not beneath. They begin to see that empathy can exist with boundaries, that sensitivity can coexist with strength. This is the quiet evolution of the emotionally drained, from martyrdom to mindfulness. There is an unspoken beauty in that transformation. The same heart that once broke under the weight of the world learns to hold it lightly. The same mind that once analyzed every silence learns to rest in uncertainty. The same soul that once feared stillness begins to crave it. This is not detachment. It is maturity. The kind that grows when exhaustion forces one to rebuild from within. And yet, the world remains what it is. Demanding, noisy, endless. The difference now is perception. The drained ones no longer try to change the world to fit their peace. They change their pace to survive within it. They stop chasing emotional storms, stop explaining their silence, stop apologizing for their boundaries. They understand now that to preserve energy is not selfish, it is sacred. Perhaps the psychology of people who always feel drained is not about fatigue at all, but about love. Love that was never balanced, never returned, never understood. Love that overflowed until it emptied the vessel. And in their healing, they learn that love must begin inward, not outward. That one cannot pour from emptiness, nor find wholeness through depletion. There will always be moments of weariness, because sensitivity does not disappear, it only deepens. But with awareness, that sensitivity transforms. What once drained them now guides them. What once hurt now teaches them. They begin to live not as reactors to the world, but as quiet observers of it, calm, aware, and gentle with their own limitations. In the end, to always feel drained is not a curse. It is a mirror. It reflects the cost of feeling in a world that numbs. It reveals what happens when depth meets demand, when compassion meets chaos. But it also carries a quiet invitation to return to simplicity, to choose rest over reaction, presence over performance, and silence over noise, and maybe in that stillness, they rediscover something the world forgot, that a soft heart is not a weak one, that stillness is not stagnation, that tiredness is not the end, but a signal, a whisper from the soul asking to be heard. Because the truth is, even the most drained hearts still beat with quiet hope. They still believe that life, beneath all its exhaustion, is worth feeling. And that belief, fragile yet enduring, is the most human thing of all.